Hi Dux, how are you? It's been a while. So, the state of the Anglo-American sphere, and this video is going to be demonetized straight away, because what I'm going to say is the Anglo-American sphere is fucking shit. It's turning fascist. And in the UK, where it's not quite fascist yet, although we have a Labour government that's ruling pretty authoritarianly to some degree, we have a situation where we are what's the word I'm looking for? We are nursing fascism to come to power in the form of reform in the UK. So in America, we have Trump. And Trump is doing his best to do a comical retake of Mussolini's fascism. It's a comical retake because he doesn't do it very well, and he announces everything that he's going to do. So you're aware of what he's going to do before he actually does it. But it's still fascism, and it's still becoming authoritarian. Now, the phrase he keeps using at the moment is the war within, the enemy within. This is an old expression that Thatcher came up with during the rise of militants and the miners' strike in the early to mid 80s. It's the enemy within, the fifth column. It's an excuse that Trump has to go to war with democratic states and cities where he can throw his weight around, crack down, and test how he's going to impose his authoritarian rule on America. If you think that Donald Trump is going to give up the presidency in 2028 unless he's dead, you got another thing coming. He's building a ballroom that's going to last the legacy of his presidency, and he's going to try and stay in office. Now, they're trying to keep him alive, as we see from the bruises on his hands. He's obviously receiving some sort of intravenous medication. His cognitive abilities are a bit questionable, but he is doing a good job of taking over America because no one's stopping him. The Democrats aren't stopping him. They're mucking about, moaning at themselves, rubbing their hands, going, oh my, what a pity this is all happening, and they're not putting up much of a fight. There's individual members of the Democratic and Independent base in the Congress and the Senate that are speaking up, but it's only a few of them. It's not the broad spectrum of the Democratic Party, and their opinion ratings are so low. They're almost as bad with Democrats and Independents as they are with Democrats and Independents with Republicans. But he's doing a good job of what he's doing. No one's stopping him. He's got the Senate, he's got the House, he's got the Supreme Court. He's having a whale of a time. And it doesn't matter how cognitive decline he gets. His sycophants will do everything he says, and they're doing it. And it's Project 2025. You're all aware. I don't need to educate you. You can see with your own eyes what's going on in America. It is a march of authoritarian fascism. Everything is being done away with that degrades America in the face of teaching its history, so that's gotten rid of. We've had Hegseth and Trump addressing the generals and the Joint Chiefs. That was very interesting. So Hegseth, when he gave his speech to Secretary of State for War, he was expecting a round of applause after his rather banal, stupid, fascistic speech. And he didn't get one. The generals all stood there at attention and didn't say a word. Trump did the same thing when he came in. He tried to get the generals to clap, laugh, applaud, and all the rest of it. Nothing. With America's rise of fascism as it is at the moment, and we all know where it's come from, and we all know where it's heading, there isn't really anything you can see that can stop it, other than the generals and the Joint Chiefs getting around the table and saying, we owe authority to the Constitution, not to the President of the United States, not to the man. He may be the Commander-in-Chief, but we are American soldiers, and we are designed to uphold the Constitution. My friend and I, Zara, have discussed before the election was due, when we both knew Trump was going to get re-elected, we both discussed the possibility that the American military would get so sick of him and he would do so much outreach and so much damage that they would coup him. In the last 6 months, I've not felt assured to say that's what they'll do. It's the only hope America has. The right has all the guns, and they're too busy going around shooting up churches and shopping malls and schools. They're armed. They're prepared to fight. Trump knows this. The only thing that can stop Trump Maybe hundreds of thousands taking to the streets in America or across a variety of cities like they did in East Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's how I've always envisaged demonstrations and protests and revolutions sparking up in democratic or former democratic countries. That's all they've played out as in recent years with the fall of the Soviet Union. But there's no guarantee of that. Trump could just issue orders for the National Guard or state troopers or police or whoever do his bidding to open fire on the crowds and shoot the crowds. It depends who's willing to take a bullet. The left is not known for reaching for the gun when the revolution comes. Not necessarily, not in modern times. We don't necessarily do that. In other countries, yes, but in the Western sphere, in the Anglo-American sphere, we're not known for getting our guns in. It's even difficult in Britain because we don't have any. So in America, the right has all the guns. The only possibility America has to stop Trump, if the people are not prepared to stand up and take bullets to protect their nation, is a coup. Now for Britain. Keir Starmer is wet nursing fascism into power by doing everything he possibly can to destroy the Labour Party as a progressive party. He's done very successful at that. He's opposed it with all the left-wingers. They now are spread out between the Green Party, some in the Liberal Democrats, and the bulk of it is trying to go for this new party by Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn, which has had a shit show start. We are, as I say, Keir Starmer is wet nursing fascism. He's wet nursing Nigel Farage into a position where he could be elected along with his members of his party to power in the United Kingdom on a minority vote, on a small percentage of the vote, but he could still have a vast number of seats. That's a nightmare scenario for this country. This country is sleepwalking into fascism. Well, no, correct that. We're not sleepwalking into fascism. We're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed walking into fascism. We can quite clearly see it happening. Last year's riots that spun off across the country, smashing up hotels and trying to burn out asylum seekers from their beds. You've got riots on our streets all over the place. You've got protests outside asylum-seeking centres. It's toxic. And I call it, the people that are doing this is what I call the Anglo-Norman English, the white Anglo-Norman English. They are mainly responsible for this. And they are thugs. And they are fascists because they use the violence of the street. They are Combat 18. There are a vast number of right-wing fascist parties that they are members of and are card-waving members of. And now we have a situation where over 150,000 fascists turned up. Well, I'm going to say fascists because they do believe in an ideology of racism and division and authoritarianism. Now, some of them can be won over to the left by voting, by policy, by campaigning, by issues, but they are to some extent lost. They don't make up the vast majority of people in this country. Yes, it's a big crowd, and yes, it's the largest turnout of right-wing populism in the country ever, larger than what Oswald Mosley was able to do in the 20s and 30s. In the 30s, sorry. Not the 20s, the 30s. It's larger than that. It's larger than what Cable Street was when the fascists tried to march down Cable Street and the Jewish and black and white communities of London stood up and barricaded the streets and fought the fascists. It's larger than that. It's shocking, but it doesn't fill me with dread because just a few months before that, over 100,000 trans people and their allies turned out to protest in London for Trans Pride London. So what does that say? We have equal numbers on either side. We can turn out numbers if we need to. Maybe. But that's all we have at the moment. We have a country which is divided, a predominant country of the UK which is predominantly right-wing media owned by billionaires and lords and barons. And there's nothing we can do about it. And they spew out garbage. And the news media on the telly uses the paper's headline stories to fit the narrative for the news that day. And that leaks in to radio, that leaks in to local papers, and it infests everything. So the right wing in this country are able to frame the narrative before it's even got a chance to get going, before the news is even spread, the right-wing narrative is formed. So there's a lot to fight for. Now online, there's a lot of good stuff. Even in America, a lot of left-wing commentators on politics on YouTube are gaining subscribers as a lot of people see what's going on in both countries, realise what the trajectory is, and bail to the left wing and are looking for a more positive, informative, nuanced message. But I think this country's far too far gone. I can't see how Keir Starmer pulls it out the bag to get a Labour election. The most we can hope for is two scenarios. One is the election is held as normal with all the electoral system as it plays out in this country. Reform get in as a minority government, but there is a big enough block of your party, or whatever it's going to be called, the Jeremy Corbyn, the Zara Sultana party, the Greens, Labour and the Liberal Democrats, to form either a massive block that can outvote the minority Reform government, or can form a large enough bloke to form a national coalition to try and do something with this country over the next 5 years as the parties come together as a mass coalition, a grand coalition, to try and sort the crap out that's going on in this country before we fall into fascism. Or the second alternative is Keir Starmer does have a brain in his head and he realises what's going to happen, and he votes in the last 2 years of the government with his majority to change the electoral system to a proportional constituency or a proportional system. Not a referendum. We know why that leads. This goes to the Commons. The Commons votes for it. They pass the legislation. They decide. Labour will be in lockstep with this. This may secure Labour a position as a majority party in a minority government, or it may tip the balance that it means that with the way it's structured, Reform don't get the massive vote share that they're expecting, and the left, as a coalition again, gets all the votes. That's what I'm hoping for. One of those two scenarios. But I'm not positive. I've got nothing to be positive about. As a trans person in the UK, my life is shit. It's shit. I get everybody having a pop at me. I don't feel safe walking down the streets. I don't feel safe in my own home. I have people in my area who are abusive towards me. It's just, and it's all because of what's in the media. It's happened minority in the past, but only in little bits, and bits that you could notice. Now it's constant. When you go out, you're constantly aware of what's going on around you. You're awake. And that's what this is doing. Minorities are fearful in this country. Even if they have a leaflet letter saying they're a British citizen, they are fearful of being deported if Reform get in. That's the nightmare America and Britain finds itself in. No one is safe. Minorities are picked on. Communities are divided. Authoritarianism steps in to fill the void. If we are not careful, we are going to wind up in a situation of a nightmare. And who's coming to our aid? In the 30s, the most you could hope for when the war started, the Second World War started, was that the New World and the British Empire and its Commonwealth would come to your aid and they would liberate you from fascism. There was always that hope. But what do we have in Britain and America if we do go down the path of fascism? Who's coming to our aid? The Chinese? The Russians? Please like, share and subscribe.